be talking to you about lemons. I've had lemons on the brain, and so has Kirkland's, Pier 1, and every other retailer. We're going to be focusing on fun lemon patterns that you can do at home with the simplest of color palettes. Right now I'm using my Koi watercolor travel set, but honestly you could do this with a kid's set that comes with a little coloring book. You could do it with watercolor pencils, whatever, the simplest of water. I even use tube watercolors, although honestly this is my go-to favorite set. I will say this, for beginners, use any paints you can get your hands on, but one thing, the better, the more expensive the paint, the better the pigment, so it is going to look better. So that's just something to keep in mind for the future. This set you can pick up the smaller one that only has 12 colors. You can pick up at Hobby Lobby for about $36.99, and it comes with a watercolor pen, which I use in my art journal all the time. That's what I use to do this and what I take church notes with. But for today, we're just going to focus on our lemons and get started. So this is one of my little playing around with the lemons exploration pieces, and then this was also one of those pieces. So you can see my color palette is the yellows, the golds, and the greens with the little accent of blue in the shadow. Alright, so to get started, just keep it simple. We're having fun. I have a little napkin set here to kind of wipe things down. I have 2 cups for my water. One is for my cool colors and one is for my warm colors. That keeps your things from looking too muddy. So I'm going to wet my brush just a little bit. I'm going to get this out of the way. This is a number 6, Heritage, and this is a number 4. I usually use my number 6 the most, but again, you didn't have time to prepare for this, so whatever watercolor paintbrush you can get at home, just use that for now. And in the future, these are great brushes. So I'm going to dip in, and I'm going to start with my lemon. I want it to be nice and wet and a lemony yellow. You can explore whatever yellows you have in your palette. I kind of like to dip in all of them to give it a nice rich color. And you just want to think basic lemon shape. So what we're talking about is something like this. You know, back to our elementary basics, we're talking about an oval. You guys can see this color I'm putting down. There's a little piece of dust there, so just ignore that. Put a little bit of yellow down in an oval shape, and at the top and bottom you just put a little point sticking out, and that denotes, you know, that it's that cute little lemon that we all love in a bowl, looking all cute and summery and making us feel like a glass of lemonade isn't far away. So something like this. Now, watercolor is amazing because you can pick up color and put it down. So I'm wiping out my brush. I wiped most of the moisture and color off of it. I'm going to go back, pick a spot where I want it to have a highlight, and lift off paint. The better the brush, the better it lifts off. So if you're using your kids' little paint brushes that are kind of the cheap ones, it may not lift off so much. You could also just take a napkin and press down in a spot and lift off, and you can see it creates a highlight. So I'm dipping into my paint again, and now I'm going to reach into the rich golden yellow and the darker yellows. And what I'm doing here is I want to create a little, see how I touch it down and it just spreads? It's beautiful. So I'm going to wipe a little bit off, and I'm going to help push it along where I want that to sit. Now, I'm going to dip back in. Remember, I'm only going into my warm cup with this color to keep things a little bit cleaner. And I'm lifting some of this off with a clean brush. I'm wiping a lot of color out and lifting off. And I'm coming up here and lift just a little bit off at the top, and that creates that little highlight that you see in a real lemon. Now, I'm going to come down here and add one of the medium-like yellows down around this area. I just touch a little bit down, it starts to spread on its own. And then I'm going to just take my paintbrush and help move it along a tiny bit. Now, I'm moving quickly because I want this to just be a brief little thing that you can play around with at home. But while this is still wet, Now, I teach a lot that you don't want wet and wet because it'll run, but that can be a really cool thing. So now I'm going into my warm cup. I'm gonna grab my favorite greens, and as I said, I like to mix it up a little bit so it's not so crayon box perfect. I want it to be kind of my own color that I mixed up. I've got some green on here, and I'm gonna pick a spot to create our little lemon leaf. And guys, this doesn't have to be exact. We're just imagining our leaf. So I'm pressing down and lifting up to get that shape. If it doesn't come out the way you want, you can just shape it yourself by outlining it. Getting a little bit more water. It wasn't quite wet enough. I'll come around to the other side. And basically what we're doing is another oval, you guys can see. But it's a little bit more of a narrow oval. A little bit smaller. We don't want it to compete with the lemon either. So we're just going to do this kind of number here, spread the color around. And now I'm wiping a lot of the color out, and I'm going to lift up some. And you know, I think that I want this a little bit of a dark accent in this leaf. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of blue and a little bit of green to make a darker green. I'm going to come right here. I'm just going to let it flow around the leaf. Do you guys see how it's spreading? I'm going to wipe my brush out. I'm going to come right along this side and lift up some color. Okay? Now remember how I like the interactions? I'm going to just touch right here and let it spread into this little lemon a little bit. Because, you know, when the colors interact like that, that's to me what's fantastic about watercolor is the flow. Then, of course, I can add a little more detail here if I wanted. Or I can just leave it super simple. Now you could fill a page with this. It's very therapeutic. It's fun. You could make the wagon wheel slice section of the lemon. But for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a little stem. I think I'm going to have it come off about like this. Then I think I'm going to have another lemon leaf. So I'm going back into my warm color and pick up some other colors. And then bring it off right here. And can you believe we're almost done? Of course, I mean, you could spend hours filling this page with a beautiful pattern. I'm wiping out some of my brush because if you put too much water down, it'll dry with a ring. And instead, I want to soften my edges. So I'm going to run my brush just around the edge, wipe it off, come back to the other side, run around the ring. Do you guys see how I'm softening the edge? I might even come over to this leaf that I already did and just soften that edge just a touch. Don't get things too wet or you'll have a big spider web shooting across. Now, see how that's spreading? So I can go back with a dry brush, just like I am here, and lift that out. Now, let's think about shadow. If I had filled this whole thing with lemons, or if I just put 3, however many I wanted, I would want a little bit of a hint of shadow. So I'm going to take a little bit of light blue, and like in this, I would just play right here to get some of the paint off, or on the side of the paper, or on this napkin. So I'm just taking a little bit of the light blue, and I'm just going to run it around the edge here. And if our light source is coming this way, then our shadow would be all on the underside. And right here, it's kind of tricky. It just kind of follows this line right here. Of course, this is your own creation, so your shadow can really be any way you want it. So something like this, and there you have it. And you can, of course, soften your edge. If you feel like it's too bold, you can always lift off. That's what's awesome about watercolor. Okay, so if you wanted one more quick thing, if you wanted to make the dissection of a lemon slice, super simple, people. All you do is make a little bit of a nice golden rind, and keep in mind it should fit with the diameter of this one. So we'll just make a circle, and it does not have to be perfect because I've never seen a tree with any perfectly round fruit. Something like this. And there's our golden lemon rind. Then we're going to dip back into our warm cup. We were using the cool cup for the leaves, warm cup for the lemons and the yellows and especially the reds. Now we're going to see, well, we want this to be white because the center of the lemon's mostly white meat around the fruit juicy parts. And then we just start making our little triangles. And just keep in mind that they're going to be a little bit rounded where they meet the rind. And you can make these different shades of lemony yellow. Make sure to keep space or they'll run together. And you just keep working your way around. Now if you really want to make things realistic, wipe some of that water out and lift off some of the paint. Because the variation not only feels very watercolory, but it just makes it look more like a real piece of fruit. And pay attention to the direction of your brush. Notice I'm not pressing the bristles down. I'm using the tip of my brush for this. There are occasions when you want to press those bristles down. This is not it. So you guys can see I'm almost done. Decorators and designers say that groups of 3 look really nice, and I tend to agree. They make more interesting paintings when you have groups of 3s and or things are off a little asymmetrical. So I would say it might be fun to, if you were to continue this painting. Okay, I just dried my brush out. I'm just going to lift some off of this one. It had a little bit too much water, and it also gives it more texture to the meat. And I think this one's a little too much of a gap, so I'm just filling that in. There we go. Now I'm going to rinse the brush. I'm going into my cool palette, getting a little bit of that blue. Now this is a little bit wet, so we could have some interesting things happen. And I'm just going to create a hint of a shadow. Notice I'm not going all the way around it, so that wouldn't be much of a shadow then. And I'm just going to hit a few spots to make it feel shadowy. Notice it kind of ends abruptly, so I'm just going to go back into that cup, dry my brush off, and then I'm going to feather it a little bit just by rubbing at the sides, feathering it. Okay, so there you go. You have lemons. You can have lemon slices, you can have a lemon. This would look beautiful with fresh squeezed lemonade under it, whatever you want to do with it. But now you have a way to paint lemons at home, super easy. After all, we're making lemonade out of this lemon that we're having with COVID. So have a great day, guys. Thanks.